In my last video, we covered when we think Blizzard is going to announce the new World of Warcraft Classic Plus experience, and why we think it's so important for Blizzard to cover it. Today's video is going to cover what we think the World of Warcraft Classic Plus experience is going to be. What I want, what you want, if there ever was a world WoW Classic Plus was announced. I'll go first. First and foremost, I want 10-man raids or flex raiding. Back in Season of Discovery, I was healing as an Orc Resto Shaman, and my guild had an absolute blast running Black Fathom Deeps and Nomergen. It generally felt like a fresh experience because they turned a dungeon into a raid. As someone who has leveled countless characters in retail, I've run these dungeons over and over. Suddenly revisiting one with friends, struggling through encounters, and chasing new loot made it feel exciting again. But then Blizzard increased it to 20-man raids in P3, and my guild suffered. We weren't the only ones. And it made me wonder, are friend groups usually around 10 people strong? In World of Warcraft Classic Plus, would it make it more accessible to have flexible raiding? I think the answer is to allow 20 to 10 to 40. I want to raid with my group of friends, my guild of 10 to 15 that have been together since 2004. Let's move on to the topic of runes and scrolls. I enjoyed Season of Discovery and Bronzebeard by experimenting with new builds. Hunting down mystic scrolls and runes encouraged me to explore places I had never really paid attention to before, and I love that sense of discovery. I've mentioned this before, but leveling through dungeons with unique builds made the grind feel much less repetitive. Whenever I got bored with one playstyle, I could swap to something completely different without starting over. Thank God for dual spec. I would love to see Blizzard grow and expand on this idea. One of the issues with the runes, however, was new players had a difficult time catching up. They would have to hunt down these runes, and it made game progress much more difficult for them. So Blizzard's solution was to offer vendors that sold these runes. We loved Bronzebeard's idea on this because they were able to do it account shared progression, and additionally their UI made the player experience much more bearable. And lastly for me, is I would like to see more playable races. One thing I struggled with when returning to the classic experience was feeling forced into playing races I wasn't really connected to. It actually made me understand why so many people chose the Alliance back in vanilla. The Horde's original races really leaned into that monster fantasy, and that isn't everyone's preference. Maybe this is finally the opportunity for Blizzard to introduce the Naga as a playable race, or even bring High Elves into the classic experiment.
I like to fart in the tub.
So those are my picks. Now I would like to ask someone who's been playing in the WoW experience since 2004. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. Hello, sir.
Doing another video? Nice. Always want to get out of the shower. What's up?
What do you want as a player who's played World of Warcraft since 2004? If there was a new classic experience, what do you want out of it?
Fur blogs. No. Great. You could literally write a book on what people think Classic Plus should be, or a podcast at least. My three things. Better class fantasy. I think Sod actually did a pretty good job of this, where classes who had been notoriously weak during the Burning Crusade and Classic era, we're talking prop paladins without taunts, moonkins with horrible mana issues like Shadow Priests as well, brought up to snuff when it comes to being able to be competitive with other classes. Now, that's not to say they shouldn't have, and this is really, really important, classes should have weaknesses, right? I think the homogenization of classes in like current WoW and live World of Warcraft is actually horrible for the classes. So you bring a class and they can do everything, right? And maybe they're like 2% better at split cleave. Maybe they're like 2% better at single target. But I think one of the things that TBC and WoW Classic did well was that there were classes that were just better in certain circumstances, and that meant other classes had weaknesses. And so weaknesses are a really big thing. I know that sounds weird. It's like, I want my class to be weak, but no, it's focusing on the identity of the classes. And if a class can't do something, that's okay, because they can probably do something more. A friend of ours who was our tank for Sod did tank Shaman, and he still talks about it to this day. He's like, that was the best tanking I've ever done. Fleshing out really good class fantasy. As another example would be Turtle WoW had their priest class, and you've played Mograine and the Scarlet
Arise,
my champion. And Turtle WoW actually had a spell kind of like that, where it was like you made somebody your champion, right? And it was thematic, it fit well with the gameplay, and it gave you a lot of cool play styles. Second one would be on the spot, putting the world, I guess, back into World of Warcraft. So Do you remember Stranglethorn Vales, the blood moon? Like the moon would come out and you're like, oh!
Just like that, somebody turned off the rain and the sun come out.
Right, and I think that plus the time gating was actually showed us a couple of really cool things, right? I think the world part of World of Warcraft is super important.
Like the day and night cycle.
That's from Epoch, and they did a really good job of that as well, right? That flushed out, again, more of the World of Warcraft. So what Lily's referring to is that during Epoch, you had a day-night cycle, and you had a little icon on the top right of your screen by your map that would show exactly what phase of the sun / moon you're in. And then that wrapped into trinkets as well, so you'd have like the Star of Elune. And so during nighttime, your spells would proc, moonfall and all that kind of stuff. And so there was a lot of cool interactions between the day-night cycle or the carriages as well. But just putting the world back into World of Warcraft, and I think that's so important. Phase 1 taught us that, hey, even a non-played dungeon, like, we'd all head to Ashenvale and we stayed there, and we had big Ashenvale fights. We weren't cramped and hiding away in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. We were out there doing stuff, right? So I think that's really important, and I know this is going to sound controversial, but I think transmogs is a really bad idea. And this goes back to the World of Warcraft, is that when you looked at somebody, you could see what gear they were wearing, right? And you're like, oh my god, they were doing Gnomergan and they got the full set, or they did, whatever, Sunken Temple, and they got that tier set. And I think that's important when you take when you let everybody dress themselves up like a superhero, suddenly nobody's a superhero, right? And I think when World of Warcraft is at its best is when people are out there doing stuff, they're interacting, they're doing dungeons, they're saying, hey, let's group up and do X, Y, Z, right? And I guess my last thing, and I know this is never going to happen, right, would be a whole PvP revamp. And I know, stay with me here, but if you watched Twitch recently, you saw the 1v1 duels, the Makaras or whatever, and they pulled, 47,000 viewers. And I know part of that's because of the people who are partaking and all that kind of stuff, but there's definitely like an interest there. So ideally, if I had the magic wand, I would say there's 3 queues. There's the fighting pits, and people in both faction cities, or maybe it's a neutral city, could go to these fighting pits and see 1v1 duels, and then they could do some, they could sit around the corner, kind of like what they have in Stranglethorn Vale. That'd be cool. The 2v2 queue would be the next queue, and this would be your premier super competitive queue. Back in the day, and this is for old school people, Wrath of the Lich King was one of my favorite arena days. Back then you had rosters, right? And so you could have, you would name your team, and then you get your friends to kind of like a guild charter, you would sign up for it. So you could have a team called like Hot Stots and Kidney Shots, or just something stupid like that, right? You'd have these queues, and then you'd be able to queue up. But I think 2v2 is really, quite frankly, the best queue, and then 3s would be like a flex queue, so you could go in as solo or duos or trios. That'd be kind of more of the casual queue that people could partake in. But primarily making PvP really easy to get into with some badass rewards, and I think that would be a really fun thing. Having said that, live World of Warcraft PvP is so hard. You have to do like on a Tuesday, you have to get these things. So making PvP really, really good to get into would be my third thing. So there we go.
All right, thank you.
No worries.
Needless to say, we're both excited for the WoW Classic Plus experience. Now I want to hear from you. If tomorrow Blizzard announced that they're going to announce WoW Classic Plus, what are the features that you would want to see? Maybe new abilities, what's your favorite race, all that jazz. This is the end of my 3-part video series for WoW Classic Plus, but I think due to your comments and your positive feedback, I want to continue doing this. So make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and then comment below if you think that I'm doing the right thing or that you're excited for the new Azeroth experience. I'm Tiger Lily. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.